So at that point, the gentleman, you said, removed the bag of garbage. Now, you've given us a description of what was in the bag. You said there was a pizza box and an Arm & Hammer bottle, but how were you able to see that through a 2 or 3 inch opening?
Well, because the bag itself was like a white or a vanilla color. It was almost transparent, and I could see the makings.
Well, okay, we all know, dude, if you're on this jury, right, you're like, everyone knows what a trash bag looks like. A white trash bag. Are they transparent? Y'all, let me know. Have you, anyone who's ever used a white trash bag, which is probably everybody, would you say that they're transparent?
And the Arm & Hammer is very distinctive because it's a yellow container. I think it's like a 64-ounce container or something. I've used that size before. I mean, I knew of that product.
You could sort of see it through the translucent plastic.
Yes.
What you're saying. All right.
And generally, you pick up the mail.
The mail, if I might answer your question and just give you a little bit of information, that I have no control of what time the mail service is delivered. Sometimes it can be delivered in the early afternoon. It might not be till later in the afternoon. I have no control over that.
I didn't ask if you had control over it, sir. I asked you if you generally pick up the mail.
Yes.
You spent the night, every night, at 4937 Hope Spring Drive between July 6th to July 12th, correct?
I believe so. Yes, I'm sure we did.
And that entire week.
So that's interesting because, again, remember that there was that comment that he had made to Simon Birch about them having been out of town, and that was.
Did you make the statement? You know that I smell, I'm like, oh God. I tried to start the car for a second time and I said, no, George. If there's something wrong, you need to find out now. You can't take it away. I told the guy, I said, will you please walk around to the back of the car and look inside this with me? Do you recall making that statement, sir?
That's probably what I said. I don't remember saying that, but if that's what I said to law enforcement at the time, probably was the truth.
And the reason you wanted him to walk around the back with you is because you wanted a witness.
Bam.
I guess that could be a true statement.
You wanted to distance yourself from all of this.
Objection, objection, argumentative. Objection, argumentative.
Overruled.
You wanted to distance yourself from all of this.
I don't understand what you mean by distance myself, sir. I don't understand what you mean.
You didn't want to be associated with any evidence in this case, did you, sir?
Argumentative.
Overruled.
If I might answer your question a little bit in length.
Go right ahead, sir.
Okay. I did not know at that time that my granddaughter was missing or my daughter was not available to be found. I didn't know that, anything like that. As far as asking someone to go to the rear of a vehicle with me, if I did ask him that, then I must have asked him that. Was I trying to distance myself from something? No. If there was something wrong and I needed to get to the bottom of it, I would have been a stand-up guy and would have taken care of it.
Once you had your witness and your granddaughter's missing and you smell that smell that you never forget, the trunk is opened.
Yes, I opened the trunk.
And you smell the smell of human decomposition.
I already had the smell, sir, and I opened up the trunk with this gentleman alongside with me to see what was back there.
And you smelled a more pungent smell of human decomposition.
To be honest, at that point, all I found, sir, in the back of the trunk of the car was a bag full of garbage.
Let me go back for a moment. Prior to you opening that trunk, you said a silent prayer.
I probably did.
And then you smelled an even stronger smell of human decomposition.
Sir, I already had smelled it prior to getting into the car and inside the car.
My question to you, sir, is you smelled an even stronger smell of human decomposition at that point.
What are you referring to, sir? I'm trying to answer your question.
Wow.
Once you opened the trunk, sir,
even for him,
you smelled an even stronger smell of human decomposition.
When I opened up the trunk, sir, I just answered your question. I'm answering it a second time.
Oh boy.
All I found in the back of the trunk of that car was a bag with
You're not
It was a
answering.
plastic
the question.
bag with garbage inside of
You're not
it.
answering it,
That's
though.
what I found, sir.
I'm not asking you what you found, sir. I asked you
Answer the
if
question.
when you opened the trunk, you smelled an even stronger smell of human decomposition.
No.
It got weaker.
No.
I'm sorry?
Sir, I've already answered your question. I don't know how many times I've answered in the most popular and polite way that I can. I'm not going to get upset over this with you, sir. You know, if you're trying to trick me, you're not going to trick me. I know what's in the back of that car, and I know what the tow manager pulled out.
My question to you, sir,
I answered you.
is it your testimony that when you opened the trunk of that
The
car,
thing is that he knows better, because if it was asked and answered, there would be an objection asked and answered, and there's not an objection because he hasn't answered the question.
the smell of human decomposition was not stronger?
At that point, all I seen, or only thing I smelled, or only thing I saw at that time was a bag full of garbage.
I'm not
That's it.
asking you what you saw, sir. I'm asking you what you smelled. And if you,
Come on.
Mr. Ashton can't help you, sir.
Wow.
Objection.
Yes. Question.
You're badgering.
Judge,
No. Question.
It really calls for a yes or no answer. When you opened the trunk of that car, did you smell a stronger smell of human decomposition?
I'm going to answer you again for the fourth time. No.
Okay. And at that point, when you have been telling Mr. Birch about your missing granddaughter, and you haven't seen your daughter in almost 3 weeks or spoken to her, and you smell that smell in that car, is that when you called 911?
I never called 911.
A young woman that you have, your child, is missing, correct?
My daughter, I didn't know where my daughter was at on that date.
And you're smelling her car that smells like a dead body, and you don't call the police.
No, sir, I did not.
And you don't call your daughter to see if she's okay.
I didn't call my daughter at that time.
And you don't call your daughter to see if Caylee's okay.
I didn't call my daughter to inquire about her or Caylee at that time. I did not.
And as a detective, you know that if you smell a dead body in a car, that's a potential crime scene.
At the time, sir, I wasn't a detective. I am just a father and a grandfather.
As a former detective, as a father, a
And that's the thing. That answer was great for the defense, because it's like, you know what? Detective be damned. As a father and a grandfather, if you know that you've got your daughter and your granddaughter that are missing, and you are not making it up about, like, that's the thing, right? This whole thing about smelling the dead body thing, right? That's the whole point. And you smell that smell, and you're sure that's what it is. As a father and a grandfather, you're not going to call 911. That's his point.
grandfather, a human being, you're intelligent enough to know that if you smell human decomposition in a car, and you have people in your life that are missing, you call the police, don't you, sir?
Objection. Argumentative. Question
Overruled.
asked and answered.
Overruled. We can answer the question.
Looking back, sir, there's a lot of things I wish I could have done and I didn't do.
You, as a former police officer, know that if you move that car, you're destroying potential evidence.
If I would have thought it was evidence at the time, probably. I didn't believe it was evidence at the time.
And you are no longer concerned about your missing granddaughter.
And about my granddaughter, her well-being, where she was at, and my daughter.
And you then drive the car home.
Yes.
You air it out,
Yes.
and you go to work.
Yes.
And you don't call the police from your home.
I did not.
You don't go to work and call the police.
I did not.
You don't tell any of the other security officers at your job, you know, that car smelled like a dead body and I haven't seen my granddaughter in 30 days.
Answered. Argumentative.
Sustain.
You don't tell anyone about your granddaughter being missing at work, do you, sir?
Objection. Asked and answered. Argumentative.
I haven't asked that question.
Overruled.
I didn't mention anything about my personal life to anyone at work. I didn't.
Did you ever go after this day to law enforcement to have a private discussion with law enforcement? about this car, about the smell of this car?
I don't know if I did or not. I know the car was at our home and towed from our home.
On July 24th, the same statement we had discussed previously, did you go there and did not want your wife or your son to know you were meeting with law enforcement?
Objection exceeds the scope of direct.
Overrule at this point.
Answer to my question is yes, sir. You did meet with them secretly?
I don't know if the word secretly or we contacted each other some way or whatever, but I'm sure I'd do anything I could to bring my granddaughter home.
You told them you didn't want your wife or your son to know you were there, didn't you,
The
sir?
scope of direct.
Sustained.
When you went and met with them on this date, you told them about your experience in this smell and smelling that car.
I believe that was part of their investigation.
And do you remember exactly what you said to them, sir, about the smell and your experience in smelling that car?
No, I do not know exactly what we talked about at that time.
Does that refresh your recollection, sir?
No, not right now.
I believe I answered that, yes, I had a smell like that outside in the woods, in a house, in a car. I mean, that's, sure, I'll agree.
And this is 6 months before your granddaughter is found in the woods.
Hearsay.
So remember,
Reapproach.
the thing there is like 6 months before she was found in the woods. But remember, it took like 6 months to find her. So that would have been around the time she was missing, is what I'm taking from that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, you may proceed.
Mr. Anthony, the reason you drove that car home and didn't call the police and went to work is because you knew Caylee was dead already. Didn't you, sir?
He can answer that question.
No, I did not.
And you knew, sir, that if you distanced yourself and was at work, that you would be the last person questioned about the death of Caylee. Didn't you, sir?
No, sir.
You know, as a former detective, that the best way to not be questioned or to not make statements about a case is to be as far away removed as possible, didn't you, sir?
Sustain as to that question.
Look at both of their faces right now. Wow.
I want to follow up on some of Mr. Baez's questions to you.
He's best. Hilarious,
Commentary?
right?
Overrule.
He asked you about distancing yourself from a piece of
Oh my
evidence in
God,
this
look at the
case.
hands.
Remember that question?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Judge, I can't hear Mr. Ashton.
I'll go back over.
He needs to go back to the
Mr.
podium.
Baez asked you a question about distancing yourself from evidence in this case. You recall that question?
Yes.
Well, let me tell you a hypothetical. If Caylee Anthony drowned, and then you took her body out of that house and disposed of in a field,
You guys hear that? That's the first time the jury is hearing that literal suggestion. It's coming from the prosecutor.
then
Incredible. Incredible.
Yes.
Leading?
He hasn't finished asking the questions.
I mean, it is leading, but he shouldn't be objecting because this is, I think he got ahead of himself with that objection. This is
It's hypothetical. Continue.
question.
if you took that little girl's body and took it down and dumped it in the swamp, then there'd be no evidence in her car, would there?
Objection, Judge. Outside the scope.
Overrule.
There wouldn't be, would there?
No, sir, there wouldn't be.
So there'd be nothing for you to run away from, would there?
Judge. Leading.
Starting Tuesday, June 10th. Starts off with Mr. Lazzaro at 10:13
Mr. Lazzaro.
p.m. Yo. Miss Anthony, yo. Mr. Lazzaro, don't copy me. Miss Anthony, ha ha. Mr. Lazzaro, suck A.D. Mr. Lazzaro, I. Mr. Lazzaro, C. Mr. Lazzaro, K. Miss Anthony, maybe. What does that have reference to, Mr. George?
Well, Your Honor, I believe what they're referring to is a sexual act.
Okay, and tell me, what does that tend to prove or disprove as to the elements of the crimes alleged, or something that portion sort of mystifies me? Mr. Lazzaro, I'm coming over. Miss Anthony, are you? Yeah. Mr. Lazzaro, after lab, yeah. Miss Anthony, ha fuck. Mr. Lazzaro, to say hello. And the next one, Miss Anthony, on a few more days, and you can bring your ass over here anytime you want and stay whenever you want. Mr. Lazzaro, well, I'm coming over tonight. Miss Anthony, you are trouble. You know that? Yep. That's the portion you're talking about?
He's like, why are you?
Your Honor, the state wants to.
Y'all, his face says it all right there. That
Helps establish the fact that the reason that she can't do what she would like to do and can't have him come over whenever he wants to come over is because the child and her parents are in the way. That's why it's relevant.
Does the defense concur with that analogy?
my God, I'm going to lose my life.
Absolutely not, Judge.
Oh man.
And that's the basis that you want to have that admitted.
Certainly, a jury, that's the conclusion that they can come up, that they can end with.
Okay. And what does that tend to prove or disprove?
Provides in essence, one of the motive for the murder.
I take it Miss Anthony is living at home at that time, Mr. George?
Yes, sir.
And you're saying just because she's living at home with her parents and because she's told no, that's a motive for murder.
I'm sorry, sir. I missed that last part.
You're saying that because she's living at home and with her daughter in her parents' home, and because she says no, that's a motive for murder?
No, Your Honor. As the evidence, as some of the testimony has already been established from Mr. Lazzaro, when they first started to date, the defendant had Caylee with her.
Oh boy.
The defendant was unable to do what she wanted to do, to stay where she wanted to stay, because she had to bring Caylee back home. As the weeks went on, culminating up to June 16th, what this helps represent and show was that she was locked in that home. She was locked, or at least held back, by her daughter. She couldn't do what she wanted to do, which is further evidenced by everything that she did do and everything that she wanted to do from June 16th until July 15th.
Wow.
That is why it's relevant, and it does help establish the motive. Because after June 16th, she didn't have to worry about her parents. She didn't have to worry about her daughter.
The next logical question is, why didn't she kill her parents?
Right?
Since everybody was in the way, but you don't need to answer that.
We went back to playing our video game. Shortly after, door flung open. Casey came running in. Her mother was now standing at the door.
Let me stop you there. Had you ever met the defendant's mother before?
No, sir.
This must have been really crazy.
I said, politely come in. They were yelling at each other.
What do you recall the defendant saying?
No, I'm coming back.
What did you do?
Sat there in shock.
What happened then?
They left.
When they left, what was your reaction?
I guess someone's in trouble.
What changes have been made since 2008.
Spartan, explain.
Well, we have no grass in the front yard, but we actually extended our patio. From 2008, we placed, in fact, last fall, I re-added more. We took the grass completely out of the backyard. Since 2008, we've been unable to grow grass in the back, so we
Interesting.
put pavers here,
Interesting.
mulched this area,
This is interesting.
and my husband extended the patio from here down with a walkway to the shed, a cement walkway to the shed.
How high up on your person is that lip of that pool?
It depends on where I'm at in the yard because our yard slopes. So if I'm on level ground right next to it, probably.
Why the hell is the jury going to have to try to figure out how high this pool is based on where it is on Cindy Anthony's boob, right? Versus measuring it.
Just above my breast area, by
I don't have words.
my chest.
Chest high?
Yes.
For breast area.
What would be
Why?
the lowest point on your person where the lip of the pool would be, depending on the slope of your yard?
Measured with a ruler.
Probably chin level.
Oh, okay, that would be the
I'm
highest.
below chin.
We don't need to be depending or relying on Cindy Anthony's breasts in order to determine the height of the pool.
The lowest? If I'm standing on the lowest part of our yard,
Right, you said it's
then it would be higher on me.
Oh, all right.
So it would be just below my chin. Just below my chin.
Okay.
The reason being is because beyond the pool, there's almost a foot difference, a step down. Once you get around the corner, there's a step down. We stopped the pool at the edge because when we put the pool in, our yard sloped, so we only leveled it out as far as to the pool, and then we have a patio off of that or a cement slab off of that, so it's down. So it might even be a little bit higher on me. It's probably about
Great. This
maybe a
is
foot
great.
difference.
We could
You're
measure.
talking about as you come
On-
around the pool.
Why measure it when we can just go through all this nonsense about the hill and the breasts?
All right.
If
Let me see if I can
Mother of God. Y'all,
fix our
this is so
discussions and look at the aerial.
There are locks on those.
Okay, on the handle,
Yes.
how high is the handle
not this again.
Normal height.
Not this
on
one.
you? Where would it be?
Why? Why can't
maybe
you
at my
measure?
hip.
Why can't you?
Possibly my hip.
I swear to God.
I never really, or waist, I never really figured that out.
Right. Okay.
Well, you had no reason to ever think about it. It's not your fault. It's her fault. They should have had people measure it, dude. It's knowable. They still live in that house. They can measure it. This is so stupid. Why? Just why?
You mentioned that there are 3 sets of sliding.
Are we measuring everything based on where it falls on Cindy Anthony's body? It's so weird.
doors to the backyard, master bedroom, living room, and then kitchen.
Yes, ma'am.
Are they all identical?
Yes.
Same locking mechanism on all of them?
Cindy's
Yes.
Do you have anything
body is the ruler, is the measuring tape in this case.
blocking the sliding glass door in your bedroom that would prevent easy access to it?
Possibly at times we might. I mean, not.
Of an above ground pool, how do you access it?
Oh,
There is a ladder that attaches to the pool
speak of the ladder.
that you put on the pool, and then you're able to climb into the pool with the ladder.
Right. That section of the pool where you would affix the ladder, how high up on you
This is
is
ridiculous.
the lip?
I'm sorry. Why?
Again,
You guys, if you're on this jury, I mean, this is pissing me off. If you're on this jury, you've been brought in from another county. You're sequestered for this entire trial. And this is what you're hearing from the state. They could have met. Why are we not measuring things? I'm sorry. This is just giving me Karen Reed with the not measuring. We don't use measurements. We don't use measuring tape. We don't know how to measure things. That's what this is. This is like red Solo cups here. Cindy Anthony is their red Solo cup right now. Why the hell? Look at this. She's having to demonstrate again. And not to mention she's sitting down and the jury can't even see what she's pointing to. And she's pointing to her freaking boobs. I'm going to lose my mind. You think about the questions here. Did Caylee drown in the pool? Okay. We know that the yard is sloped. So ladder or no ladder. Another question that I would have is on the part where it's the slope is like the grass is like the highest level. Potentially, could you get into the pool without the ladder? Do you even need the ladder if you're on that certain part of the grass? I mean, there's so many questions here. What you need to know is you need to know how tall the pool is from the ground and where that varies depending on the slope. And then you need to know the height of the ladder and the measurements of the ladder and how much the ladder weighs and all this stuff. And this is what we're getting instead is literally how does it compare to Cindy Anthony's boobs? So
About the lip is about
oh my God.
mid sternum. Chest area.
Again, with the boobs.
So if you are standing right at the area where the ladder is, you can see the surface of the pool
Yes,
at
ma'am.
your height.
Yes, ma'am.
The ladder, how big is it?
Oh, for fuck's sake.
The removable part of it. How big is it?
Could we get
well-
measurements?
It would probably be a little bit taller than me
This is
because it's on a slant.
You guys, this is insane. This is insane. What is happening?
To walk up, and I think there's
Why?
3 or 4 steps before you get to the platform
They
on the
still live
ladder.
there?
I
And
think
they
there's
still have
3
that-
rungs, 3 or 4 rungs.
Okay. Is that ladder cumbersome?
No,
I don't know how you're a prosecutor asking these questions with a straight face, to be honest with you. How do you even do it? How do you even do it? Because it seems so hard to fathom that you wouldn't have measured this.
it's heavy enough that a small child couldn't pick up,
You know
but
what I bet?
it's not something that I had difficulty.
You know what I bet? Here, I'm going to make a prediction. How much you want to bet when it's the defense's case in chief? They weighed the ladder and they measured the ground and they measured the pool. And they're going to be like, here you go, jury. Here's numbers for you instead of how tall is it compared to Cindy Anthony's boobs. That's just that's squirrely speculation.
Putting on and off.
All right. So on June 15th, when you and Caylee decide that you're going to go swimming in the early evening, did you take the ladder from its position and put it onto the pool?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
How many pictures did we see of the house, the interior of the house, the roof of the house, the backyard, blah, the fence around the pool from above, but no pictures of the actual pool where it matters, right? With the ladder or just the ladder itself or what it looks like when you're getting into the pool. We have no idea. This pool is a mystery. This is insanity to me. This is insane. If I were on this jury and I'm going along and so far the state hasn't really done much to prove anything, right? But this part right here regarding the pool and the measurements, same with the door, right? All of these things that are measurable because they still live there. And the fact that every time something needs a measurement, it's just compared to Cindy's boobs and that we're not seeing pictures of the pool, that right there for me would be a big turning point if I were on this jury of like, what is going on? Because you don't have to have any trial experience or any experience to realize that that's not normal, right? They should be giving you measurements. They should be giving you measurements and pictures of the pool and pictures of the ladder. Heck, they could even bring the freaking ladder in because it's detachable. This is crazy. This is crazy. Absolutely crazy.
How long had Casey been talking about Zanny?
I believe it was in the spring of 2006. Casey was still engaged to Mr. Grund, and I remember Casey talking about one of her friends that worked at Universal as an IT person, and she said that Zanny was his girlfriend, and she watched his child.
After the 15th of July, you looked for this Zanny person.
Yes, ma'am.
Until when?
Until about 6 weeks ago.
Did you guys hear that? They were still looking for Zanny up until 6 weeks ago?
What is your experience in that area?
I debride a lot of very bad wounds and work with a lot of patients who have amputees, and a lot of times their tissue starts to rot.
All of this, again with the smell credibility, all of this wouldn't be necessary if they had strong evidence, or evidence at all, forensic evidence or evidence that tied the defendant to, the crime scene or to the body. Like, again, it just, the fact that this is such a big part of this case, like people's smell abilities, is wild.
Now, you said that you used the expression, what died, with your husband. At that point, were you considering that something died in the car?
No, at that point I did not.
The other problem is this, is that if they don't walk these statements back, right, where you've got Cindy Anthony who's like, oh, what died? And then you've got George Anthony who's like, I'm sure it was a dead body in the car or whatever. The problem they've run into is like their actions following that don't make any sense, because you've got George Anthony who doesn't call 911 ever. He just goes to work. And then you've got Cindy Anthony who touches all the shit in the back of the car and tries to clean it, right? Either they really did believe something died, but then they're intentionally messing with the evidence, right, essentially. Or they didn't really think that, but then they told law enforcement that in hindsight to try to, point the investigation towards Casey, really. That's the only way that you can reconcile this.
In Tony's apartment, there was like a little balcony area, and I just stood kind of towards the stairwell.
Did you see Amy knock on the door and get a response?
Yes, ma'am.
Who did you see come to the door?
Well, I didn't see Casey at first. I heard her voice when the door was open, and then Amy kind of motioned for her to come out. And then Casey stepped outside, and that's when I popped around.
Okay. What did you say?
Ambush.
I just
ambush.
asked her what she was doing there, and I told her that she needed to talk to me, that we needed to talk. And
did you see Caylee?
Thing is, again, this is where it's like, I understand how this is one they want to, the state want to present this as like, it's because she was concerned about the safety of the daughter, blah. But again, the thing is that if you look at what normal people would do, right, especially with the whole thing with the smell, you wouldn't touch anything and you would call the police if you were really concerned about whether you thought your daughter was involved. Like, this whole thing, it's all about Casey, right? It's like whether you think your daughter is involved or not shouldn't even matter. It's like if you think that somebody's died, it doesn't matter if it's a stranger or a family member. You call the police and you don't touch anything, right? And so again, I feel like a lot of this is just this family dynamic and these control issues and this interpersonal stuff, but like with the excuse of like, you know what I mean? Because it's like she's showing up there and ambushing Casey. This whole thing with like hiding in the corner, don't tell her I'm here, is wild. The thing is like what the difference is, like her involvement, right? The mom's involvement, just like how she calls the boss, just like how she showed up at work, all this stuff. And like the way Tony said earlier tonight, like, oh, someone's in trouble now. I mean, it's like literally, it's not normal. It's like a really weird thing with the involvement with the whole family. And so it's like the thing that is interesting to me that's a red flag is like the mom wanting to insert herself in these things instead of having the professionals do it. Call law enforcement, right? Like have them track, like, and obviously they get involved after this point, but this whole ambush with the mom thing is weird. And it also explains why the law enforcement was confused initially, because they're like, is this just like a family argument? Because that's what it sounds like. So it's just, and then you've got the whole thing where the mom said that she thought Casey was jealous of her. It's just very weirdness. What I get from this too is like there's this like obsessive thing of wanting to see Caylee. So again, it's really not concerned that something has happened to Caylee, or they would have, I'm sure that the mom would have called law enforcement. If she really believed that, she would have called them earlier, right? So it's really more like this control thing, but under the guise of like, I feel like it's almost exploiting Caylee in a way, to be honest with you, of like using her. It's like using Caylee as an excuse to continue to keep this foothold of control in this toxic, dysfunctional family situation. It's like,
And as I was going down Pershing, I noted the Orlando police station that was on Pershing, and I told her that if she wasn't going to give me the answers, that I was going to get someone to help me get them.
All right. So at this point, you pulled into a substation for the Orlando Police Department on Pershing.
Yes, ma'am. And I pulled up to the door and started to get out of the car and realized that they closed at 5 p.m. and it was way after 5. So I just got back in the car and told Casey that this was her last chance to tell me what was going on, and she was trying to explain to me that we talked about issues that we were having, and we were kind of arguing a little bit in the car, and I wasn't getting the answers that I wanted, so I dialed 911 from the car.